You know, we've had a few really good races kind of in a row at tracks that we're not used to seeing great racing at, so I guess we were due for something like we saw here today at Pocono. But well, let's talk about it. How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric, and welcome to Out of the Groove. So, Pocono. Those of you who've watched my videos for a long time, I've been a little hard on Pocono before. I don't think I'm excessive. I've often credit Pocono for a lot of things. It's a beautiful location. It's a unique style of racetrack. You know, I think I've never been to Pocono, but the fans who've all gone to Pocono tell me it's amazing. So I don't like to be too hard on Pocono, but when it comes to the on-track product, it sucks. It absolutely sucks. I'm sorry. I am not a fan of Pocono Raceway at all. Now, I'm not going to fault Pocono entirely for the racing we saw today. The new Aero package did not work here nearly as well as it's worked at a lot of the other racetracks we've been to recently. So I think the Aero package, I think NASCAR deserves some of the blame in this case. But Pocono, just as a racetrack, the best finish, we just don't see great racing at Pocono very often. I think back a few years ago, Ryan Blaney winning his first race, that was a fun finish. I think back a couple of, 2015, there was a fuel mileage race where people were running out of gas. That was an interesting race, but overall, Pocono isn't my type of racing, and I'm sorry about that. I just don't like Pocono. So I'm going to try to be pretty straight to the point today's video. I'm going to talk about the top finishers because we are going to talk about the race itself. We're going to talk about where people finished and how that plays into things, because I think there are a lot of very interesting stories that came out of this one. And then, of course, I'm going to put this race on my Groovy gauge, so I'll save my real review of the racing product for the end of this video. But I guess to start with, let's talk about the top finishers. Let's talk about the winner. Let's talk about where people finished in this thing. Kyle Busch wins his 4th race of the year, breaking a tie he had with Truex and Brad Keselowski. So Kyle Busch is easily atop the playoff grid at the moment. 4th win of the year, 55th win of his Cup Series career. That ties him with Rusty Wallace for 9th on the all-time NASCAR wins list. That's an impressive feat. People continue to forget that Kyle Busch is knocking on the door of bigger and bigger and more famous names on that list. He's going to be up there with Allison, Earnhardt, Waltrip, all those guys within the next few years. And, it's just, we're continuing to see just a taste of what's yet to come. He didn't dominate this race. He kind of dominated stage 3 more or less. But actually, the winner of the first 2 stages of this thing were Kyle Larson. But you notice he is nowhere near the top of this list. He hit the wall in the final restart, finished 26th. Tough break for him. He won that All-Star race a couple weeks back, but the last 2 weeks really haven't been good for him. So points-wise, Larson's still struggling a little bit, but just thought I'd throw that out there. He did win the first 2 stages, so if he does make the playoffs, he's got some points coming his way. Brad Keselowski finishes 2nd every week. I just keep harping on this because it has not changed. Joe Gibbs Racing is clearly the top team in NASCAR right now, and Penske is right there on their heels, but not quite on their level. So once again, Kyle Busch, a Gibbs car, wins. Keselowski, a Penske car, finishes, a somewhat close 2nd. Then you got Erik Jones there in 3rd. Big day for Erik Jones. He's run pretty well for a few races in a row, had some top 5s, top 10s. And then last weekend at Charlotte, blew a tire on lap 15, finished dead last, killed him in the points, so he needed a big day today. 3rd place finish, looked like he was a top 5 car most of the race. Big day for Erik Jones. Especially this weekend, talks of his potential contract extension or whether it will be extended with Gibbs. That's been coming up this weekend. I might do a video about that in a day or so. So there's been some rumors circulating around Erik Jones and his future, obviously. Good runs like this are good for him. Chase Elliott 4th, continuing to carry the banner for Hendrick Motorsports. Clint Bowyer 5th. Stewart-Haas Racing still not where they need to be. Kevin Harvick actually had a pretty good car. Looked like he might be one of Kyle Busch's biggest threats, but then his pit crew did what they do best, and that is suck. There are a few things in this world that are as reliable as Kevin Harvick's pit crew dropping the ball completely. They are just terrible. I'm sorry. Not saying he was going to win the race today, but he had a top 3 car, and you never know, could have had a shot at the win, if not for that pit crew with the uncontrolled tire penalty. It's a tough penalty, it's a tough call, but goodness me, his pit crew's just bad. So SHR with not a great day, but Gibbs, a strong day. Martin Truex Jr. actually blew an engine late in this race, which we don't see very often, especially with the 550 horsepower. Don't see blown engines too often, but Truex finished, DNF'd in this one, but the other 3 Gibbs cars all there in the top 6. Good day, I guess, for Joe Gibbs Racing. Joey Logano, another Penske guy, and then you got Daniel Suarez. He finished 2nd at Pocono in one of the races last year, driving for Joe Gibbs Racing, so coming over here at SHR, you would hope that he would back that up with another solid performance. 8th place, not too bad. I'll give William Byron some credit. He started on the pole for this race. He and Chad Knaus have really figured out how to run well on Fridays and Saturdays. They've still not quite figured out how to race on Sundays, but this solid top 10 at Pocono is very promising in my opinion. Skip around here a little bit. Almirola, Kurt Busch, Ryan Ryan Blaney, not bad. Daniel Hemrick, Rookie of the Year contender, who was on the show just a couple days ago. Solid 13th place finish, so not too bad. I think that's his second best finish of the year, so hopefully better things are coming in the future here for Daniel Hemrick. Chris Buescher's been impressive this year. Another solid performance here, 14th. And you got Alex Bowman, 15th. Hendrick Motorsports still kind of inconsistent. Chase Elliott was great. William Byron obviously was great in qualifying and ran pretty well in the race. Jimmy Johnson was up in that top 5, top 10 at points. Same with Alex Bowman, but ultimately neither of them were really there when it counted. Newman, DiBenedetto, Paul Menard had an issue with Austin Dillon early in this race. Austin Dillon ended up wrecking out. He DNF'd, so a tough break for him, especially when points are considered. He's right there near that playoff bubble. Really tough to get a DNF at a track like this. Jimmy Johnson there 19th, so there you have it. That's your top 20 finishing results for this race. I mentioned Kyle Larson finishing 26th. Harvick finished 22nd as a result of that penalty and whatnot, and also we had some mechanical issues towards the end as well. Stenhouse wrecked late, finished 32nd. Truex was 35th, and then 37th was Austin Dillon, like I mentioned. So those are some of your notable finishers, but there you have it. Big day for Kyle Busch. And now I do want to spend basically the end of this video talking about the racing, talking about the Aero package, and this kind of is a good transition here from Kyle Busch to talking about the Aero package, because if there's one driver who's been pretty critical about the Aero package this year, it's been Kyle Busch. Talking about the race in more detail, yeah, there was very little passing. Restarts were still fun, as ever. Pocono restarts are good, and I will say the first half of this race wasn't too hard to watch because there were a good amount of cautions, there were a good amount of restarts, and therefore there was a good amount of passing, some drama, there's some spins here and there, people getting mad at each other, there's pit strategy coming into play, so the first half of this race was not too bad. The second half of this race, especially stage 3, pretty much went caution free. I know they had a caution there with 15 to go or whatever, but the other 45, 50 laps of the stage were all green, so it just is what it is. I was a little surprised. I thought that this race might be still pretty good because I figured with the way the big rear spoilers are on these cars, the way drafting is coming to play, the way people are able to suck up and get huge runs on drivers at mile and a half, for example, on the straightaways. I thought with Pocono having super long straightaways, still with the big rear spoiler punching a big hole in the air, I thought for sure we'd see a lot more drafting up on each other on the straightaways, slipstreams, things like that. I really thought we'd see a lot more of that. We saw virtually none of that, and I was a little surprised by that. I didn't think this race was going to be amazing or anything, but I thought it would at least be, equal to most other Pocono races, but no, somehow today's race was probably a little worse than most Pocono races, so I don't know, that was kind of disappointing. A little surprising, I will say. A little bit surprised by that. But the disappointment I feel now after watching a Pocono race is not new. It's not a new feeling. So let's put this thing on the Groovy gauge. I think the worst race to this point on the Groovy gauge was Auto Club. I gave it a 45%. In fact, that's the only race this year I think that's been below average on my Groovy gauge. Pocono, I'm sorry, guys. I really try to give Pocono a chance because I know a lot of fans love Pocono. Like I said, people who go to the races in person seem to think Pocono is a really fun track to visit. It's a beautiful area, obviously, but man, the racing just continues to let me down. I don't think it was all Pocono this year. I think the Aero package definitely had something to do with it. Definitely did not work very well. But this race today, I got to give it a 35% on this year Groovy gauge. It wasn't a fun race to watch, honestly. I said it earlier, the first half of the race wasn't too bad because you had enough restarts, but Pocono, really the only time I was even close to the edge of my seat was restarts. There was a great restart where I think William Byron was second in the outside lane, got a huge push, and kind of got pushed into turn 1 and almost spun out, but made a crazy, awesome move. That was really exciting to watch. Obviously, there was 3 and 4 wide racing and the occasional spin here and there, some contact here and there. That was entertaining, but aside from those handful of restarts that we really didn't see much of it at all in the second half of this race, Pocono was forgettable, as usual. I'll be honest, it is a shame that this race gets 2 dates a year, and we're going to be back at Pocono in like 6 or 7 weeks. I mean, goodness. And we got a double header of Pocono next year. Now, I'm still not against the double header at Pocono too much because at least then we're getting all of our Pocono out of the way in one weekend. So, like now we're just raced at Pocono, kind of wasn't that great. We got to go back in a few weeks. At least next year it'll all happen at once and we can just get it out of the way. So, I'm not against the double header at Pocono, but man, just Pocono it just doesn't work for NASCAR. It just really doesn't. I'll give it a 35%. I don't know. I think NASCAR should try to make some aero changes before the race in July. Whether it's get rid of the aero ducts, whether it's put 750 horsepower in it for this race. I don't know if that would make sense, but whether it's anything, NASCAR should make a change before the July race. Or else, in my opinion, there's no reason to run it because what we saw today was not fun at all. They could not pass under green. I'm sorry, y'all. You know, I'm usually pretty positive about racing. There's a lot of bright sides, and there are some bright sides of this race. I mentioned them. Good strategy early on, and even towards the end, good strategy. Some great restarts. There were some good moments in this race, but man, yeah, this is the worst race of the year that I've seen so far. And it's a shame because we've had a few really good ones in a row. But if the run was going to stop anywhere, I probably knew it was going to be Pocono. So it'd be a shame if we went to Bristol and had a stinker like this. That would be a big letdown. But it is just Pocono. I think we'll live with it. We'll go on. We'll move on. Next week, hopefully, it'll be a little bit better. But yeah, that's my Groovy Gauge rating. Let me know what you guys thought of this race. As always, thank you so much for watching. Remember, you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter. Those links are down in the description. You can also check out how you can get an Out of the Groove t-shirt down there. Support me, support the show. I greatly appreciate that. And then, of course, a big thank you to my Patreon supporters. Michael Harrison, at You Is The Star, SelfishGifts.com, Mentally Effective, Cameron James, John Koblenz, Jason R. Long, Wesley Donaldson, Isaac Dennison, Mika Suzuki, iFantasyRace.com, TheRacingInsiders.com, Matthew Koulopoulos, Adam Lean, Pepe Luscious, and the rest of these awesome Patreon supporters. Thank you all so much for your continued support. You guys go the extra mile to help keep this show growing, and I greatly appreciate it, so thank you. That's all for today. I have a couple of episodes planned for this week. I want to look at the playoff standings a little bit later in the week, and because we're starting to get down to that home stretch before the playoffs start, end of the regular season, summer months, so I want to look at who's in trouble, who's not, who's doing good, because the standings have shuffled a lot the last few weeks. So I want to do that. I want to talk about some silly season rumors and reports as well. Christopher Bell, Eric Jones, etc., etc. Clint Boyer is even his name starting to come up. So I want to talk about all that in future episodes this week. So it should be a really busy one. Yeah, if you missed it, this last week I got the chance to interview Harrison Burton and Daniel Hemrick in recent episodes. So go check those out if you missed them. Hopefully we get some other drivers on here in the near future. That'd be really awesome. But thanks as always for the support. Hope you guys have a great rest of your weekend. And I'll see you guys again very, very soon. Bye-bye, y'all.